North Ball is absolutely purring at the moment. The Kangaroos have defeated the Dees by 59 points at Marvel Stadium yesterday. This is absolutely crazy stuff, guys. I was at the preseason game against the Dees a couple of weeks ago, and Melbourne really took us apart in that game. It blew out at the end, and the exact opposite has happened in this game. An absolute procession for North Melbourne in the fourth quarter, and I haven't seen a win like this for the Kangaroos in some years. As a North fan, you're always slightly worried when you have a slender lead at three-quarter time and you're worried that the opposition team is going to run over the top of you. But today wasn't that day because we just seem to have so much dynamism, so much aggression at the football. And if anything, it was Melbourne that were the ones that looked like they were going to capitulate in this game. But it must be said that there were some interesting things when you look under the hood at some of the numbers of this game. There were some reasons why Melbourne were in the game, at least for three quarters anyway. So we're going to unpack all of that and take a look at it. But first of all, I need to zone in here on the midfield because I think that's largely where the game was won for North Melbourne. Now, I talk about the stoppages. I think the stoppages were important in some ways and not very important in other ways. If I look at the overall stoppage count, North Melbourne won that number 42-30. The scoring from that source was 59 points to 17, so a pretty big discrepancy in North Melbourne's favour, but you have to zoom in a little bit here because it was mostly from centre clearance where they had that dominance, and it was mostly in the last quarter of the game. So overall, North Melbourne kicked, of those 59 points from stoppage, 43 of them were from centre clearance. So North were really able to take advantage of that 6-6-6, get the ball in quickly, get the ball in deep and get it to isolated forwards who could do damage. You think about Nick Larkey, his contested marking. Cam Zurhaar was both good in the air and at ground level. I thought Jack Darling really competed hard and well for the ball in the air as well. And then you had Curtis and Constantine kind of buzzing around there as well and putting a lot of pressure on. So I think that worked really well for North Melbourne. Partly that was what the mids were able to do from a point of being able to step out of traffic, step into really advantageous positions, and partly that Melbourne didn't put enough pressure on those mids to try to stop them doing what they wanted to do. And particularly in that last quarter, most of the possessions that North Melbourne were winning were actually in that sort of defensive mid zone, which is not the defensive 50, but the just forward of that closer to centre. They won 46 disposals in the first quarter. So Melbourne certainly having the ball mostly in their front half of the ground. In quarter two, pretty much the same really. It's 43. The highest area is that defensive mid zone. And as we got into the third quarter, it actually continued to shift in Melbourne's favour. They pushed North Melbourne deeper and deeper, where they're getting to the point in the last quarter where it's almost up around 36 possessions won in the defensive 50. Still, that defensive mid-zone is there, and North Melbourne were able to move the ball much more fluidly, much easier off the half-back line than what the Dees were. But it was a fourth quarter where the damn walls just completely broke for Melbourne, and it was a procession from centre clearance. Here we go here. 40 possessions won in that sort of attacking mid-zone area of the game, and then another 15 inside forward 50 as well. So they ran the ball out of stoppage, they got the ball inside forward 50, and they pretty much kept it there for that entire rest of the game. So the big next question here is, how is a midfield of Gawn, Petrarca, Oliver, Viney able to be so soundly beaten, at least from a scoring point of view, from those stoppages? I think the place that we have to start here is the ruck battle, Max Gawn versus Tristan Sherry, because this was absolutely one-way traffic. The overall hit-out count was in Zeri's favour, 29-27, which is a +2 advantage. Doesn't sound like a lot. But this was the first surprise for me looking at the statistics. I would have expected Max Gawn to have a much higher win ratio. If we go back to the 2024 game between these two teams, Max was +10 in that area. He has a 7-centimetre advantage over Tristan Sherry. And you would think if he's playing his game and it's on Melbourne's terms, he's going to be getting his hand to the ball, jumping at the ball, being able to get it at its highest point and tap down to his midfielders. But he actually lost that count by 2, which is a big tick for Tristan Sherry. And then it's what Tristan Sherry was able to do from, a tactical point of view in being able to engage Max Gawn, get the ball really in tight, in close, bring the ball to ground, take it out of the ruck and win clearances that Max Gawn just wasn't able to fight for physically in that part of the game. So on top of the hit-out advantage, Sherry was able to get 5 ruck hardball gets. That's when he takes the ball directly out of the ruck and either, handballs it to one of the mids or kicks it directly himself. Now, in other games I've watched him, he has done this quite a lot and he gets a lot of dirty ball and then the opposition intercepts the ball at halfback and is able to sweep the ball up the other end and score. He seemed to work a little bit more symbiotically with his midfielders today where he could flick the handball around. They could get the ball out into open space. One of those smooth movers like Powell or LDU was able to do their thing. And North would just have much more advantageous clearances. They were getting the ball in deeper and it wasn't getting cut out along that defensive mid zone. And I think that was really important for what Tristan Sherry did today. And if you look at his overall conversion, he converted 12 of those into clearances and 10 score involvements, more importantly. And when you look at North Melbourne's overall scoring profile and how much they were able to score from centre clearance, a massive tick to Tristan Sherry in this ruck battle. In contrast to that, you had Max Gawn, who lost the hit-out battle overall. He did have a slightly higher percentage of hit-outs to advantage, so he was still able to find his mids when he won the hit-out, but they just didn't have the same cut-through. Gawn only ended the game with 1 clearance overall and, more importantly, 3 score involvements. So the hit-outs that he did win just weren't able to be converted into scores. A part of that's on his midfield group and on his forward connectivity as well. So it's not all on him, but he certainly lost this battle and it was a big reason that Melbourne lost the game. The next part of the game we have to talk about here is the North Melbourne midfield because they were absolutely imperious today. I thought the way that they worked in and out of traffic, the movement was so exceptional. They got out, and same as what I said off Tristan Sherry there, they got out into really advantageous positions in that midfield and got the ball in, importantly, a lot deeper from clearance. And when they were on transition, they were able to receive the ball and hit up targets, engage those small forwards, and have really nice entries. I think it was about 35% strike rate of conversion from inside 50 today, which is way better than what North Melbourne have been running at in recent games. So that was a real positive. I thought Tom Powell was the best player on the ground. He had 5 centre clearances and he kicked 1 goal himself. And if you go back to that centre clearance scoring profile, if you're getting the biggest number of centre clearances for North Melbourne today, you're a big reason for why the team won. I think Melbourne just didn't have a player that could go with him from an endurance point of view. He was covering the ground so well. He's sort of low-key powerful as well. He can break tackles at times, and he was able to use his agility, his lateral movement to sort of step away from traffic and get into really good spots. And that was more important for when he was releasing the ball as well. He teamed up beautifully with players like Luke Davies-Uniacke, who's another one that not many opposition midfielders can go with when he gets the ball in a little bit of space and he can actually move on you. And that's where those really nice inside 50s come from. So LDU was massive. He had 9 kicks in the game. So it wasn't a big disposal game for Luke Davies-Uniacke, but he went at 90% efficiency from his kicking as well. And it was just the penetration that these guys were able to get. Like Powell had 10 score involvements. The cut through was there. 31 disposals for Powell and 13 uncontested, which I love because he's really getting, not just from a stoppage point of view, but he's really getting involved in the game from a transition point of view as well. And the other one of the mids I really want to talk about for North is Luke Parker. He's come into the side. He's been a real enforcer in other weeks, but he was really, really powerful in this clearance phase of the game as well. He had 3 centre clearances. He kicked the goal and he had 11 score involvements as well. And I think he just gives North Melbourne something a little bit different from a physical point of view. He really gets at the opposition, gets in their faces. He laid a couple of really big tackles in this game at important times, and he's just a really good footballer, Luke Parker, isn't he? Like, to be at this point in his career, coming to Sydney, he's still being asked to play not as a primary midfielder. He's sort of doing bits and pieces, playing forward at times, playing a little bit outside as well, and he just fits in and plays any role that's given to him, and I thought he was absolutely incredible in this game. And for Melbourne, in at that centre bounce group, I thought you have to give a tick to Clayton Oliver coming back. He's starting to play some really good football. He had 36 touches. He had 12 clearances. He had 4 centre clearances and 9 score involvements himself. So, he was right up there with any of the best midfielders in this game, but just wasn't able to have that same connectivity. And I think when you look at how North Melbourne were able to move the ball from inside to out at those stoppages and get the better entries. I think that was kind of the main difference. I just didn't think Melbourne's mids really linked up, synced up, and got the ball to those forwards. They do have a bit of an inexperienced forward line, it must be said, with Jefferson, Van Rooyen, these types of players, and it just didn't really work for them as a unit today. I think some of their other midfielders kind of defended a bit poorly. I look at players like Viney, Sparrow, who was in that midfield as well, and they just didn't have the movement to be able to contain players like Luke Davies-Uniacke, Tom Powell, who were even Sheasel, McKercher, these types of players who were constantly moving, changing direction, stepping around players. And I just don't think they put enough pressure on the North Melbourne midfield, and they were able to do their thing and ultimately score, 125 points in the end. So I think that's a negative. And I think when you're playing like the highest centre bounce players for Melbourne today, Christian Petrarca, Clayton Oliver and Jack Viney, you'd still expect that midfield to have a bit of a physical domination of this North Melbourne midfield, and they just didn't have it at all. Chandler went in later in the game into that midfield group to try to give them something a little bit different, but I thought he was actually better playing as that high forward. He looked like their best option at kicking the ball inside 50 and their best option actually at hitting the scoreboard when the ball was on the ground inside forward 50 as well. So they kind of robbed Peter to pay Paul there. They put him in at the midfield like he did well, but I think it was one of the more bizarre moves from Simon Goodwin when you look that you've got a player like Trent Rivers who's playing half back. He was pretty ineffectual in the game, and he's someone that could actually go toe-to-toe with some of those North midfielders from a movement point of view and get out of the stoppage in better areas. Melbourne, to me, look to be a team that are in this sort of unusual transition phase where they're changing their game plan, they're changing personnel, and just not everybody's on the same page. I see Christian Petrarca sort of bombing the ball inside forward 50 just to get it in quickly, like a game style that they've played, a direct game style that they've played. And then the rest of the game style's kind of communicating something different, that they want to move the ball. Not as direct, not as long. Like you look at the stats, something that caught my eye when I went in and had a look at their statistics. In 2024, they were 16.9 metres per disposal, which was the fifth highest in the competition. Fast forward to 2025 this year, 15.9 metres per disposal, which is a full metre per disposal less, which puts them at 13th in the competition. So they're clearly trying to move the ball a little bit more by hand. They're not kicking as long to contest to Max Gawn and then winning those contested possessions. If you have a look at their contested possession, 2024 to 2025, 38.7% of their overall possession build was contested in 2024, and now it's only 36.9%. So clearly there's a game style shift, and I don't think everyone's on the same page. I think they need to look at personnel and look what kind of suits the personnel that they have in the team, and then kind of think what game style they're going to play. Because if you're playing players like Oliver, Viney, Sparrow, Petrarca, but then you're trying to, flick the ball around by hand and kind of play this, freewheeling game off the half back line, I don't think it's going to work with the personnel that they have at the moment. North's transition football in this game was absolutely breathtaking at times. I think that was kind of what was fueling them overall in the first three quarters until it broke open from centre bounce. Charlie Comben was exceptional at diffusing the opposition's thrust. I think he took 8 intercept marks for the game. He was just involved in everything. I think this North Melbourne key position backline is going to come up against more difficult opposition when they're playing on players like Wiedering and Mackay and those sort of guys. Hogan, it's going to get a little bit more difficult for them from a one-on-one defensive point of view, but Comben was huge today in the diffusing attacks. Caleb Daniel, I thought he started the game quite slowly, actually. He missed a few targets, and I just didn't think he was on it with his kicking, but he gave them so much control back there. It is really the impetus for this entire ball movement game off the half-back line. He had 31 disposals, 22 uncontested possessions, which kind of shows you that they're trying to get the ball into his hands at all time. And he had a little partner back there, Finn O'Sullivan, who just had the 12 disposals for the game, but he did some really nice things, particularly when he got the ball higher up the ground. His run, how direct he is with ball in hand, and just how classy he is on the ball, I think was fantastic. And from those 12 disposals, he had 4 score involvements as well. So I thought he was absolutely exceptional in what he did today. But it was also about what the high half forwards and the mids did as far as getting involved in this ball movement game. Tom Powell, again, was exceptional here. Harry Sheasel was exceptional at just being able to find space and give North Melbourne uncontested mark outlets. And then you go forward to players like Paul Curtis. I thought he was exceptional at coming up the ground, affecting the contest in different ways today, and then pushing back hard at goal And his aerial game's so good as well. So you get that ground level stuff, you get the strength that he has, and he can take marks. He took a couple of contested marks in this game, I believe, as well. Cam Zurhaar was huge when the ball went in deep. He had big contests in the air. He had big contests at ground level as well. And Nick Larkey was a presence. So it was really working very well. Of course, Melbourne had, Stephen May out of the team, which makes it a little bit easier for that forward line. But overall, I think the way that those North forwards just got up the ground, they worked really hard and made it impossible for Melbourne to defend them. Whether it was from a contested marking point of view, it was changing angles. Like the amount of North Melbourne midfielders that just got time and space today, LDU, Tom Powell, Colby McKercher, Harry Sheeds, all these guys, they just move so well and they completely shifted the Melbourne defence constantly. And I think that was kind of the entire key when you look at North being able to get on top from that ruck battle, getting first hands on the ball from the midfield, and then just being able to change direction on Melbourne and just confuse the defence. I think for Melbourne, it's going to be a pretty tough season for them. I think they'll be competitive most of the year. They'll have some good wins, but I think they're definitely, they're well and truly in a transition phase. The one thing that I would say about Melbourne is they probably need to get more games, more responsibility, I think, into some of these younger players. Xavier Lindsay was absolutely awesome today. I think they've found such a good player there. I think they need to get Harvey Langford into this side, even if it means making way for someone like a Charlie Spargo, that type of player. Cade Chandler was brilliant today, and I think that's a real tick. They need to get Trent Rivers into the game more. Even players like Judd McVie, when he comes back from injury, needs to be in a really prominent role, I think. And you start to, even if that takes a few centre bounces off players like Viney, just get them in there, get games into them so you can look at the next 2, 3, 4 years. That is a wrap for this video, guys. My voice is absolutely going on me here and I'm running out of performance overall. Thanks for watching this one. I'm super happy that the Kangaroos got a win here in round 2. Good start to the season, and I'll see you guys next time.